One of the weird things about presidential politics this year is that almost to a person, the entire Republican presidential field this year is totally on board with abolishing the VA, getting rid of the VA, or at least privatizing huge swaths of it, telling veterans they're not going to be provided medical care anymore. They can go get it themselves. So when veterans get off the plane and come home from war, just set them loose into the private health insurance market to fend for themselves. Thanks for your service. Good luck with that. Here's a coupon. This used to be a very radical idea. When Mitt Romney dipped his toe into the privatize the VA pool back in 2012, he got it chomped off so fast that he abandoned the idea immediately and basically never spoke of it again. But this year hasn't been that long. It's only 4 years later, and this year almost the entire Republican field is in favor of abolishing or privatizing the VA in some way. And that didn't just happen overnight, even though it happened fast. Candidates this year were led in that direction, in part by this group. This is a group called Concerned Veterans for America, a fairly new conservative veterans group. They have been quietly courting the Republican presidential candidates over the past year and singing to them the virtues of getting rid of the VA. They've held a series of town hall events with a bunch of this year's presidential candidates in the early primary states, and one by one, the Republican candidates have dutifully said that, yeah, they see the light. They, too, want to radically change the way veterans in this country get their care. In some cases, to turn veterans over to the private health insurance market, even though veterans themselves say they very much do not want that. Concerned Veterans for America has been led for a long time by this guy, seen here in his other job as a Fox News Channel host, naturally. His name is Pete Hegseth. He's a veteran himself. And about a year and a half ago, Mr. Hegseth let out a little secret about Concerned Veterans for America. He kind of spilled the beans on a thing that had long been suspected, but was never actually verified until he said it out loud, which is that this ostensibly grassroots veterans group, this group that has been single-mindedly focused on trying to kill the VA, turns out they're not so grassrootsy after all. In fact, the Kill the VA conservative veterans group didn't arise organically out of the veterans community. It was a deliberate creation of the billionaire conservative activist brothers Charles and David Koch. And the reason we know that the Koch brothers donor network created the supposedly grassroots veterans group is because the head of that group, Pete Hegseth himself, admitted it while speaking at a Koch donor conference about a year and a half ago. This is audio of those remarks. It was obtained by an online outfit called The Undercurrent. It was published by The Nation, although MSNBC has not independently verified it.
Concerned Veterans for America is an organization this network literally created. Now, unless you've been living under a rock for the last couple of months, you know about the crisis the Department of Veterans Affairs. What you probably don't know is the central role that Concerned Veterans for America played in exposing and driving this crisis from the very beginning. I thank Charles, David, Mark Short, Kevin Gentry, everyone that puts in the sweat equity that makes this possible. And I want to thank you for your courage for standing up and being here. Being Concerned Veterans is something that came out of this network, and your investors are the ones who made this happen.
That is reportedly the Koch brothers guy at the end there saying, you all, as Koch network investors, you all are the ones who made this group happen. And you created Concerned Veterans. We reached out to the Koch donor network today to see if they could tell us how much they have given this group and if they share this policy goal of killing the VA. We haven't yet heard back. But it's kind of one of the sleeper issues of this campaign, that the Republican candidates have basically been captured by this Koch brothers created, Koch brothers funded movement to kill the Veterans Administration. And now, in the midst of that effort, with Iowa a week from Monday, with just a few months to go before the general election, when presumably this issue is going to pop like you can't believe it in the general election, I mean, imagine the fights about this at the general election debates. Right when all this kill the VA, Koch brothers funded organizing is about to blow up as an issue, the guy who has led that group, the guy who's been at the forefront of this abolish the VA movement since it started, he has just, all of a sudden, poofed. He's just disappeared. He quit. He is no longer the head of Concerned Veterans for America, and nobody seems to know why. Officially, both sides are saying that this was a mutual decision. We reached out to Concerned Veterans this week. They declined to provide any more details about what happened. Pete Hegseth told us himself that he left over a, quote, difference of opinion over the future of the organization. And that's basically all he would say. But regardless of the circumstances of his departure, what happens now? Because this is weird, right? I mean, this one group has been the driving force behind all of these Republican candidates getting on board with this incredibly radical idea of killing the VA, making veterans fend for themselves in the private health insurance market to get their coverage, which brings a huge, totally hot-button issue into the general election, because obviously no Democratic candidate is going to stand for that, and almost all of the Republicans want to do it. But now the group that has turned this radical idea into mainstream Republican policy, they appear to be in the midst of maybe melting down themselves. This policy position on privatizing the VA or getting rid of it is now basically part of the Republican Party platform. It's conservative orthodoxy now that the VA has to be burned to the ground and never rebuilt. Good luck, vets. And if you don't agree with that, you must be and ridiculed and called out as a VA apologist. It was this Koch brothers funded and created group that helped push the Republican Party toward that radical position. Now their top guy has poofed right at the start of the election with no explanation whatsoever. So what happens next here? And does that mean that the most radical plan to deal with veterans issues in our country that we have seen in generations poofs with him?